We're always looking for ways to improve teaching and learning.
Raise your hand if you think we do not already have a 3x8. Tell me why. Letitia?
But often, in the ever-changing environment of our schools, it's hard to know what works.
Bring that over, if you will, and compare it to...
Today, many educators are working together, sharing experiences and data to measure the success of their school improvement efforts. This collective process is known as action research.
Action research helps brighten the light which existed in every teacher when they chose teaching as a profession. The reason that everyone went into education was that they wanted to have a powerful, positive influence on the educational lives of students. And what action research does, it helps reinforce and cement the belief that together we indeed make a real difference.
A junior high near Seattle, Washington, had a 60% student turnover when its boundaries were changed. Facing an urgent need to rebuild a spirit of community in their school, they started a student advisory program.
The specific thing we're trying to achieve with action research was to evaluate our advisory program. This is our first year using the advisory. We know that we are not perfect and we want to make it better. This was a way in which we could analyze the good as well as the bad of the advisory and keep the good and modify what we thought we needed to change to make it a better program.
In Augusta, Georgia, the staff at Barton Chapel Elementary School recognized a need for change when student scores on a state writing exam were below average.
Action research has given us the tool as far as how and why. We are now able to look at some of the reasons why students cannot write. It has taught us how to analyze the data, how to look deep into what we found, and how to use the information to help us solve or minimize some of the problems we see.
These educators are striving to meet challenges common to many schools today, improving student performance and building a cohesive school community. Action research is a key element of their school improvement efforts.
The whole idea of action research is to improve practice. And in terms of school-wide action research, it's really collective inquiry, the whole faculty inquiring into how students experience education in our school.
By providing a systematic means to gather and analyze objective data, action research becomes a basis for informed decision-making. This program will explain how action research works and present brief examples of teachers using the process. The action research cycle moves through 5 phases. The first is selecting a focus. Here, the researchers agree on a topic for investigation.
The faculty works together, and it can be a goal they already have in mind. They know from some other work they've done, from a needs assessment or accreditation effort, hey, we need to work on mathematical problem solving, or we need to work on writing quality. They come to common agreement that we're going to work on this particular area of student learning.
Some guidelines for selecting an action research focus include making it student-centered, designed to improve learning. At the same time, the focus needs to be manageable, considering the time, personnel, and resources available. It should be a matter around which consensus can be built. And the focus should be within one's scope of influence so that researchers can take action. These educators in Ames, Iowa, work together to reach consensus on a focus for their school-wide action research.
We want a goal and a definition that is broad enough so that all of our faculty members will have ownership and tie into it. And yet we want it specific and focused enough so that, number one, we're all heading towards the same thing, and number two, that it's measurable in student behavior in the end.
The teachers reported what they had worked on in their department meetings.
We took a look at various options that people brought up that might be possible goals for the coming year. Then we reviewed all the possibilities with those. What were the pros and cons of each one?
After reviewing input from all departments, the group came up with 4 possible focus areas.
And Tony, the 4 that we decided to vote on are here. The first one had to do with practical, creative, and critical thinking. The full thing reads, students should pursue the significance of and the interrelationships in what they are learning by using practical, creative, and critical thinking skills. Number 2, staff should recognize the diverse capabilities, the unique learning styles, and the individual needs of all students and should develop strategies to accommodate this. Number 3, maximize the talents of all staff through restructuring the high school organizational framework. And the last is staff and students will show courtesy and respect for themselves, others, and our school. So those were the 4, and then we started discussion on those.
I think the previous goal that we worked with self-esteem was difficult to work with for the simple reason that it was very difficult to measure. And working with critical thinking, though it's difficult to measure, is measurable. And I think
reaching agreement on a focus may take some time, but it's time well spent because a strong consensus helps drive the action research process.
Let me then restate our goal, just to make sure we all have it clear in front of us right now. Our goal, our action research goal at Ames High School is to develop and enhance student achievement in the area of reasoning, which specifically includes creative and critical thinking skills. Now, in the 5 steps of action research, that's step 1. We have now.
Once the focus has been selected, the action research cycle moves into the next phase, collecting data.
You know that you're going to be collecting data about the learner and about the learning environment. So that's 2 aspects that as you look at what will inform us about the quality of student writing. So you know one thing you'll look at will be writing samples. Well, in terms of the learning environment, what will inform us? What's some immediate information? It might be just how much time we're providing opportunities for students to write. And we might keep a simple log of that.
A practical way to get started with data collection is to review the professional literature and examine existing sources. Schools regularly record a lot of information about their procedures and their students, grades, attendance, referrals, and so on. This wealth of archival information can be a useful starting point and establish a baseline for research. One way to collect new data is to conduct surveys. Surveys can be distributed to parents, teachers, and students, thereby providing a broad base of information. Surveys can also be completed anonymously, which encourages candid responses.
Here at Barton Chapel, I administered a survey, got input on how teachers felt about the school climate and the school community. So through that process, I was able to bring teachers in more on decisions that were made here at the school.
Interviews are another source of new data.
Thanks for coming in today. We've called in several parents to interview them. We had taken the parent survey back at the conference time, and now we're asking some parents to come in and answer some more specific
With interviews,
questions.
researchers get immediate feedback and more information than they might get on a survey.
So I have about 5 questions here for you today. Okay. Okay. Are there any activities that your child is involved with outside of school?
He's got quite a few.
While interviews can be time-consuming, they might also reveal information that researchers wouldn't get in other ways.
Do you feel that there are any clubs we could offer here at Matson or any activities that would involve other students?
Researchers appreciate the personal contact of interviews and the opportunity to ask follow-up questions.
When they see the results based on what other teachers are telling them in their own building, what students are telling them in their own building, and what parents of those students are telling them, that even though they might not like it, they do buy it. And that's a big step in getting consensus.
Student creative projects offer another important source of data. Exhibits, expositions, and portfolios are accurate performance-based measures of what students know, how they think, and what their attitudes are about their work.
I had this little girl. Her name is Tiffany. I had Tiffany stand up and I said, Tiffany, I want you to read the story you just wrote us about dinosaurs. And she held up the paper and she stood up here and she read 2 sides in complete sentences. Her usage was beautiful. I pulled out a portfolio and I said, Tiffany, look at your first story that you ever wrote for me and look at your last story. And she looked at me and she laughed and she goes, oh, Miss Trenbeth, I was just a little girl then. And I stood there and I said, you were? And she goes, yes, that's when I was a baby I wrote that. And that was just 6-7 months ago.
The method of data collection you choose will depend on the nature of the research. A general principle, however, is that collecting data from multiple sources normally leads to more valid results.
We know we're going to look at samples of student work, but that's not the only thing we're going to look at. We're going to look at how much students are writing. We may even conduct a few interviews and ask students about how they approach a writing task, so we can hear from them in a different way that we can't when we look at their products.
Once data is collected, it must be organized in such a way that it becomes relevant and meaningful to the question at hand.
The third phase of action research is organizing data. This is when you put it together so that it can have meaning for you. You put it in some order so that it can inform your study of an area of interest. And again, simplicity is the rule.
This team of educators has gathered considerable data related to their focus on the effectiveness of advisory periods.
Okay, now just to summarize so everybody knows what we're doing, we're going to take the data that we collected, we're going to organize and identify which one of the data fits into the different bins or the categories we have. One will be the school climate, and we're referencing strictly advisory. We're talking about teacher training, scheduling, accountability, and anything that we don't have a category for will be in the general comment sections. Okay, have we got that?
Sounds good. That sounds good.
All right,
Okay.
let's get to work.
We looked at all of the data. We saw that it came from several sources.
Let's go with the ones with percentages first.
It came from parents, it came from students, it came from teachers by way of surveys, interviews. And what we did as a team was sort out all of this information, put it in bins, categorize, and actually start making sense of all of the data that's come in.
After we had completed the binning, it was important then to get it into a workable format. A bunch of Post-its on a large piece of construction paper or butcher paper wasn't going to be very viable to use. And so what we did is a couple of us went to a computer using a database. We established kind of a sorting system. We were able then to produce a document that would allow us to make a presentation to our staff with some general findings about action research and our advisory program.
Organizing the information leads to the next phase of action research, analysis and interpretation.
Phase 4 in action research is analysis and interpretation of the data. And this is when we ask ourselves, as we look at how we've organized it, and we say, now, what does it mean about how our students are performing right now? What does it mean about the learning environment they're experiencing? What does it tell us? And that's one half of it. And then we move to the other half, the diagnostic half that moves beyond the current state. And we ask, they're sort of parallel versions of those same two questions. We say, what does this mean in terms of the learning behaviors and attitudes we'd like to see? And what does it mean in terms of designing the learning environment for the future?
This group of educators is interpreting data about the learning environment in their district.
The issue is communication. And every time we review what we're doing for communication, just like you pointed out, Pauline, well, everybody communicated. I mean, we're doing everything that we know how to do. I think we are now in an arena that we're going to have to reach beyond our own set of experiences and start trying some untried things, because what we know how to do isn't getting the job done for us.
That's something that has come up over and over again as a need from parents, staff member to staff member, from Lincoln Building to our building, and also, of course, with the child. And being able to explain what we're doing with action research to the parents is something that our staff needs to be able to do.
My guess would be that just like at the instructional leadership level, at the district level, we're finding we have to move beyond the written communication and get into the personal, whether it's PTO, PTA meetings, parent advisory groups. I think that's perhaps where we have to look for the next step, beyond the print materials, and get into the face-to-face and the question-answer times to really help get it embedded or drive it home.
Maybe that's what we're really talking about. The communication has to be personal because the bureaucratic stuff isn't working.
Analyzing and interpreting data gives direction to the final phase of the process, taking action.
That's when we use all the information that we've collected and organized and analyzed, and we use it to make a collective decision about the actions we'll engage in as a faculty. Now, we don't want to imply that it's only at this phase that we take action, because from the very beginning, when the faculty decides that there's an area of common concern, they've taken action to improve education in their school.
Taking action brings the process full circle. It means making decisions based on research findings and then beginning the cycle again to see if the new action brings improvement. The action research process requires a great deal of sharing and communication among staff. This in turn builds trust and creates a culture that supports risk-taking and change.
Action research promotes a professional dialogue among teachers regarding their instructional practices in a very non-threatening way, because instead of there being an emotional discussion about what they like or don't like, there is a discussion about what the data shows in their research. Therefore, they can talk about it in a more objective way and then affect their own practices later on. It promotes collegiality because it brings people together to talk about those things.
Other programs in this package show how educators in each of these locations are using the action research process.
Okay, you want to read for me?
At Barton Chapel Elementary School, action research is helping the staff to develop a successful new writing curriculum.
Our action research started where our children were very poor writers. I can honestly say that from kindergarten through 5th grade, our students' writings have improved.
At Matson Junior High, teachers are using action research to strengthen the sense of community at the school through their advisory program.
To give teachers the ability to make change is just a marvelous tool. So oftentimes we feel powerless to make change, and this gives you a vehicle in which you can make change, and it's really pretty painless.
Ames community schools are finding that action research is an effective tool for guiding their district-wide school improvement efforts.
You walk into the school buildings and you see teachers talking about what's happening to kids and discussing their practice and successes they've had with a student that they weren't able to be successful with before. There are so many things that I've seen over the 4 years I've been here that have just changed the tone.
Schools improve as the people within them improve. These educators are learning that the action research process respects their professional expertise and provides them with opportunities for continued growth.
What action research says is reflections of professionals together really gives us power as a school. Conditions are always changing. It's not because what we've done in the past has not been good. We are always distanced from the ideal. That's the nature of education and democracy. It's a utopian quest that never ends.